Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Austin Tech Connect. This is the official podcast of the Austin Technology Council. My name is Thom Singer, and I've been with ATC now for 3 years, and we're looking to reinvent this organization to take it into the next decade, but we're going back to being a grassroots organization, which means we need you. A grassroots organization can't happen if we're not being led by the grassroots. So please let us know what you want, who you want interviewed on this podcast, what you want talked about at our breakfast, and what other types of programming we need to do. I can't do it alone. I need all of you who are listening to this show to pipe in and share your ideas. We created this podcast 2.5 years ago so that we could introduce you to a cross-section of people right here in Austin who are doing really interesting things, many of which you know, some you may never have heard of. But the great thing about Austin is the connections that happen is where the power is. And today, I'm going to introduce you, if you don't already know, to Carlisha Robinson. Carlisha, welcome to the show.
Hi, Thom. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you here. So Carlisha is a serial product manager. She loves products. She's passionate about it. In fact, she is passionate about people, products, and problem solving. And she does this through the use of technology and through connecting business solutions directly to customers. So she was born in LA and then moved to LA, which means she was born in Louisiana, but moved to Los Angeles, where she lived through her early teens. Then she moved back to Louisiana, where she went to Grambling State University in Louisiana and got a computer science degree. And upon getting that computer science degree in 1991, she did what so many of us did. She made that smart choice to move to Austin. So, Carlisha, I also moved to Austin in 1991, so we share the vision of what has happened over the last 34 years. So, Carlisha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Great introduction.
So, it's interesting because I often talk to people who've been here 5 years or 10 years, or sometimes I talk to people who were born here. But, you and I have that exact same vision of what we've witnessed that's here. So this is going to be a fun conversation. But first, let's go in the Wayback Machine, right? Tell everybody about Grambling State University and why you went there and why computer science.
Yeah, so Grambling State University is in the small community of Grambling, Louisiana, between Shreveport and Monroe off I-20. You missed exit 81, then you passed it, turn around and come back. And that community is a college community. So when my mother moved us back from Los Angeles, the big LA, back to little LA, it was so that her daughters, my sister and I, could have a more tight-knit community, get out of the big city, take her girls back to a more safe community, but also put us in a position where we are in a community where college is expected. You're going to be nurtured and grow here, graduate high school, and go right into a college that's going to build a degree for you and a career so that you can sustain your life afterwards. And that's what Grambling was for me. So really, really outstanding university and an outstanding community of educators in that school.
Nice. And I love it when parents make decisions that are always thinking forward for their kids. I absolutely love that. So here you are, you graduate with computer science. The world is your oyster. Why Austin?
So Austin was one of the options that I had. I interned with IBM throughout my college career. And I interned at Research Triangle Park in Dallas, in of course, Poughkeepsie, which was the headquarters at the time before they moved it to Albany, and then or to Akron. It might be what. Anyway, I moved. I went there, and then I came to Austin in my senior year for internship. And that summer of 1990, when I was here, I fell in love with Austin. So back in the day, when you graduated and you got your corporate offer, you get one offer from IBM with 5 locations that you can choose from. So I did the math. And going back to California, going to North Carolina, going to New York, did not equal out in terms of affordability like Austin did.
Oh my gosh. So I remember moving from California to Austin in 1991, and it was like I got a 40% raise, even though I got not just a little bump in salary. It was so affordable back then.
Yes.
And we're affordable now compared to certain places, but I don't think people realize early 90s how wonderfully inexpensive Austin was.
Yes, it was fantastic. So the math on that, and I was, and I chose Austin, but I had also experienced Austin that summer before, and just fell in love with it. It was a wonderful place.
So it's interesting because, in the early 90s, IBM was a powerhouse. It was one of the 3 or 4 companies that really made up our large business community. People forget that we didn't have a lot of big employers. There was 5 of them maybe. And,
Right.
and certainly IBM was one of them. So, you got to go headfirst into a company that was leading the way in Austin. Certainly a lot of the research and stuff that was happening in Austin was top drawer. Where did you go after IBM?
Yeah, so I spent about 4.5 to 5 years at IBM, had some great opportunities there. But as you know, the tech boom just really began
Mid-90s, yeah.
Mid-90s. And there were a lot of companies that were spinning off from the big IBM, and your Tivolis and your
Texas
Lenovo's
Instruments and Dell.
so
Yeah,
all of those,
right.
all of those companies were happening. I got an opportunity to go to BMC Software, which was also a company that was started by 3 IBMers from, that were lifelongers. So I went to BMC Software, and believe it or not, I was at BMC Software for nearly 20 years.
Wow. During the boom days of tech, that's
boom,
rare.
yeah.
You get a ribbon for staying at one company for 20 years.
Well, I'll tell you why I was able to stay at BMC for so many years. It's because while the boom was happening outside, where other companies were popping up, the boom was happening for BMC inside the company. So there was a lot of transition at BMC, and I got to do 8 or 10 different roles and learn so much within the company. So it was like I was moving to different companies, but as BMC acquired other companies like Remedy, and we were partnering with other solutions, it was like I was moving around quite a bit. So I felt safe in the BMC space, but I actually was quite active in the way my career was evolving.
Well, and BMC is one of those companies from that era of Austin that really had a great reputation, too, for mentoring its people, for actually giving them challenges, for putting them into new jobs. I mean, obviously, Trilogy is famous for that as well, but BMC was one of the ones who, okay, you've accomplished that. Now let's move you to this other area and give you a long runway to learn new things. And the mentorship that was great. So what are some of your fond memories of that era of BMC?
So I will say it was like a family of a family away from family. We supported each other in a lot of ways. As I feel like I grew up there. I didn't have children before I went there. I wasn't married. All of those things happened while at BMC. And as we grew as a company, and the mentorship continued to evolve with your, people like Joyce Durst, who you know.
Oh, sure.
She's over at,
she's a member of the Austin Tech Hall of Fame. She was one of our first inductees. Yeah.
Yeah. And Joyce was one of my, greatest mentors at BMC. And so I got a chance to go from engineering to QA to professional services to consulting to actually learn how to become a product manager at BMC Software, which is where I fell in love, with that whole discipline. And all of that happened under one roof, with various solutions and different types of products that we were building and marketing at the BMC company.
So it's interesting because you mentioned Joyce Durst. She's been a good friend to me and to the Austin Technology Council the last couple of years. But BMC, actually, at a time when there wasn't a lot of women running divisions of tech companies and running tech companies, there were a lot of women in sort of growth leadership roles at BMC. Yes. And, you had a computer science degree. There weren't a lot of women graduating with computer science degrees in 1991. Now, when you look at some of the top schools like Carnegie Mellon, UT, Stanford, Berkeley, their classes are 50% women. But it wasn't that way when you started, right?
Right. No, it was not. It was very often that the handful of women that were, computer science or engineers or, directors or managers, VPs, there was literally, you can count them, on one hand. And there was a whole lot of men that were in seats there. But the community was so strong that all it was for us in BMC was a bunch of smart people trying to build, innovative solutions to solve our customers' problems. So it was an awesome space, at that time. And it's still a great company, still thriving as a great company. So love it.
Absolutely. And so what did you do after BMC?
So after BMC, I took this a leap that scared me to death. This is when I started learning that what I was doing every time I moved to a new opportunity was a pivot, right? It wasn't necessarily changing the game, changing the whole direction, but it was all about using your skill set in a different position at a different angle. So I was pivoting to how do I take this wealth of knowledge that I have about product management and evolve that to another industry. So I went from BMC, which was an IT service management solutions company, to an IP, intellectual property, business analytics company. And people were like, whoa, what are you what are you doing? And it was a pivot for me because what I learned in that transition was, one, a completely different side of business. Intellectual property is, protecting your patents, your trademarks, your copyrights, your actual innovative proprietary solutions are really in your patents. I didn't know that there was a whole business around that, that there was millions and millions of dollars and billions of dollars being spent to protect, hold and litigate, around that with companies. And so I went to Inography, which was an intellectual property business management company, and learned a whole new industry while still applying the pure discipline of product management, road mapping, prioritization, focused and paced execution, all still applied. So I learned then that I could apply my knowledge around product management to any industry, any type of company, in any type of sector in the market, period. And that gave me a significant amount of confidence in the discipline of product management. I just continued to utilize that throughout the rest of my career.
So that is so fascinating because, and I'll tell a personal story in a second, but I loved what you said about just using your skills, in a new angle, just taking them into something else. And that it freaked people out. Like, how could you go from this industry to that industry? They're so radically different. But at the end of the day, it's really the same job. If you're, a product manager, you're really doing the same skill set. You're just having to learn a new product and new types of customers. But so many people get so freaked out that they can't change industries because their skills are for that industry. Why do you think so many people lock themselves in a box when they have skills that are totally transferable?
I think because it's comfortable. A lot of people feel very comfortable when they feel like they're the subject matter expert in the thing that they know, right? So they get really comfortable there. I get bored like that. and that could explain also why I moved around so much in BMC, 8-10 different jobs while I was there, because I was constantly curious about how does this part of the business work and what do they do over here? And how does that make the whole enchilada taste delicious, right? So I've always been curious about other things. So I think people get comfortable and they won't lean into their curiosity, and they certainly don't want to be a person maybe that starts over. A lot of people, when you think you go to another industry, they think they're starting from the bottom and they've got to work their way back to being the person that is seen as the czar. And I don't have an issue with that. I think that gives you the hunger to keep learning new things, and it makes you a better, broader, person, and your skill sets actually get better with that, not worse, So I just love new things.
Well, and I agree. And really, it's not hard to rise to that level because you already have the skill set. It's just it's just tweaking it a little bit. And so
application.
I had my background in sales and marketing, and I did a few things in the sales side, and then I flipped over. I became the marketing director for what was at the time the biggest tech law firm, working with all the startups in the late 90s, early 2000s. I was the marketing director for Austin and then also Dallas for a while for Brobeck, Flager, and Harrison, which at the time was one of the big companies representing all the startups, and everybody was going public and all that stuff. And Brobeck went away. The firm stopped existing, and the lawyers brought me with them to Andrews Kurth, and I spent another 2 years doing marketing for Austin and Dallas at Andrews Kurth. And then I left and I went to a bank, and people are like, well, how can you do, marketing and biz dev for a bank. You're a law firm, 5.5 years. They go, you're a law firm marketing and biz dev person. How in the world are you doing it for a bank? And I'm like, what? It didn't even dawn on me that it wasn't the exact same job. My job was to market services to tech companies, and they had to have lawyers. They had to have bankers, and lawyers and bankers are right-brain people who don't understand sales and marketing. And so I was attached to them, helping walk them in the door. It was the exact same job. I just went from Robeck or Andrews Kurth to Wells Fargo. And then I went to a consulting firm. I became the marketing and biz dev director for VCFO. And people are like, but that's accounting. That's, how can you work? That's CFO, and controller level accounting consulting. How in the world can you work for VCFO? And I'm like, it's the same thing. They're selling to these startups and the companies that were established. Yeah. And
business development is business development, no matter how it's spelled the same way. And the definition of what you're doing is the same regardless.
Yeah, it just amazed me. And then I had my own business as a speaker for a long time, talking about how do you do business development in services firms and stuff like that. And when I came to Austin Technology Council, people were like, how in the world could you've never run a nonprofit? And I'm like, well, the job of running a nonprofit is marketing and biz dev. It's the exact same job I had back at the law firm. It's just a different label on the door and on my business card. But I'm amazed that people look at people like you and me and think, wow, you're so brave. It's like, no, it's the same job.
I'm doing what I do, though. Yeah, it's the same job. And I think it's just the curiosity of wanting to take your skills and apply them to something else so that you learn something else.
And you do grow. You do grow and learn when you do these changes.
You absolutely do grow. Yeah. Yeah. And also the transition for me, which is one that's scary for people as well, is I went from IBM, very large public company. BMC at the time was a, decent, medium-sized public, company, to Anography, which was a PE-backed startup, company. It was in a later series when I joined, and we were definitely going through all of the strategy for acquisition and liquidity, which was another learning experience, for me. I'd been on the M&A side before inside of BMC as a public company acquiring another company, but I had not been on the side of PE-backed companies that was looking to sell a solution and be acquired. So that developed a completely different muscle, for me. And in my career now, I've gone through 2 liquidity events with companies now. Not something that I potentially would have done had I just stayed at BMC or stayed with IBM.
Right.
It just didn't put you in the right position for that to necessarily occur. And so the next 5 years after, with Anography, its acquisition, and then to CPA Global, which was a global intellectual property company, that opened the door for me to actually work outside of the U.S. So now I'm working with a company that is European based, in London. My commute was, people complain about the Austin commute now. My commute in that job was from Austin to London on a very regular basis.
Did British Air have the direct flight yet?
Yes, finally.
My daughter has moved to London 6 months ago. And so my wife and I often will fly over, work remotely from London and hang out in I'd love to say we visit the
direct flight just in time.
So much better to have the direct flight.
Much better.
And I'd love to say we go to visit my daughter, but she's an international adventure travel blogger. And so she's on the road like 125 nights a year. And her husband is with her a lot. So we actually just have a free apartment in London. So we look at when she's not going to be there and we're like, London would be great. Let's go to London.
Yeah.
So, but it would be harder without that direct. It'd be harder without, and it's free. That, my daughter just soon have us there than not. So, let's fast forward now and what you've started doing recently. I think it's fascinating, but I think with your skill set, I think it all makes sense. So, what is Carlisha doing today?
Yeah. So, I like to kind of describe my past as, to sum up my career in IT to IP to e-commerce, because I did work for e-commerce platform company that built solutions, and then into retail, with, Bed Bath and Beyond and Overstock. So it's just
when I met you, you were with them. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I like to say that I built it, I've tested it, I've marketed it, I've sold it, I've implemented it, I've integrated it, and I've supported it.
And you've probably been a customer in some cases.
And I've been a customer at some point. So the full circle. So now I am very excited to take all of that experience, that lived experience, and wrap it up into my own consulting firm where I am sharing that knowledge and those best practices by advising and consulting, coaching and mentoring, speaking at conferences, like you are as well, so that I can help the underdog, that small company, that medium, sized business, that startup that has a brilliant idea, but are at the cusp of failure because there's a primary problem that they can't solve. And that is usually focus and pace. It's not the idea. It's not the innovation. It's not that there aren't people, that they haven't been able to get people to believe in the idea. If you're, the PE back, VC back, somebody's poured some money into this grand idea. But the distractions that the founder often suffers is the brilliant idea keeps evolving, but it never reaches the end point to where it is the value that the customer needs and that it's going to be paid for. So I love going in and helping these companies and these founders and these small teams really hone in on their mission with focus and the right pace, because pace and focus is everything when it comes to execution, and to help them figure out how to ignore distractions, right? For example, in terms of distractions, a lot of companies are distracted by AI. They think, okay, Carlisha, come in and help us with our AI strategy. Like, happy to do that, but AI is just a part of your technology strategy. It's not your strategy, and it's only a part of your strategy where it makes sense. So I am spending time today working with companies, helping them with their tech strategies, helping them, their product teams with road mapping, prioritization, best practices so that they can operate fully, and then working with people on their marketing and customer experience strategies.
And I talk to so many of these founders in those sort of growth-oriented companies. They're out of startup phase. They have some money. They're shipping product, whatever that is, but they are stuck. And so having someone like you to consult and help them is probably important. Who is the ideal type of client that you work with?
The ideal client, it's I would say a company that is at a stable point from a financial standpoint. They have their product. They've been through a couple of paces of it, and they're ready to scale and grow. And usually they're in their final round or their next to final round of funding. And the expectation from the investors is that you're going to scale, and grow as well. So that applied pressure point of, we believe in your idea, but now you've got to show us return on the money that we put on the table. And that's where it's not just the product anymore. It is, how are you going to market? How are you organizing your roadmap to provide value that is going to be differentiable and is going to resonate with the market? Do you even know who your market, who the target market is? And then how do you reach them and execute against that while building a customer base and for your scale and growth strategy? So that's the ideal point. It's that pivot point. And I use pivot a lot. It's that pivot point of, we've got something good, we've got something great, and it's time for it to kind of hockey stick. And I am I've been really good and fortunate in my career to actually hockey stick a lot of companies at various different sizes. So that's ideal for me.
And I love your sort of definition of pivot. We're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We're just we're shifting the focus. We're moving the pace so that we can hockey stick. And I think that's great. So, you're new to doing a lot of this. You've worked with a few clients. Word of mouth. How do you find your clients?
So word of mouth always works. There's nothing better than a warm, hot referral, right? That's a warm handoff, and you just meet people. But I also meet people at conferences where I go and speak with at conferences. I meet people who are looking to solve problems. I meet people through the Austin Tech Council. and the Austin Women's Tech Council. So I meet people just in networking events, here in the city, and just going to think tanks where people are literally there to try to figure out, how do I solve a problem, and sitting around the table with other smart, problem solvers is a great way to meet potential clients.
Well, and you and I are a little more seasoned. My hair's turning gray, not yours. But a lot of the younger people don't go to conferences. They don't go to networking events. They don't want to do that. And I think if you don't show up, and my tagline now is real leaders show up. If you don't show up, you miss that collision with people you don't even know that you need to know. And so you miss finding clients, you miss finding job opportunities, you miss finding the ability to create new products. You're very good at this, and you show up in the community, a lot of different organizations, and you go beyond the community to national conferences in your area of expertise. What advice do you have for people who might be 10, 20, 30 years younger than you and I are about why it's important to engage with others?
Yeah. Well, I think nothing happens in a bubble. There's no such thing as solo individual, I did it all by myself success. There is, it just doesn't exist, and it can't be sustained that way. So my advice to people is for them to get out of their bubble, get out of your own way, go and talk to people and meet people, and meet them in the way that fits your personality. Not everyone's an extrovert like you and I.
Right.
Some people are more introverted, so they want to meet with them in virtual spaces versus a conference with thousands of people and things like that. But there also are conferences that are networking events that are intended to be smaller.
Right.
So if you don't want to be around 5,000 people, you prefer to be around 50 to 100 people. Find those types of events and get into your space where you're comfortable, but definitely don't be on an island by yourself. It's pretty lonely, like that way. So yeah, that's what I would say.
There's an old saying, and it's been attributed to several people, but it's your network is your net worth. And so, and starting younger really is sort of the key. It's the relationships you build when you're in your 20s that start paying off when you're in your 40s and beyond. And so I think that's a really good message. And a little secret for those who are like, oh, but I'm an introvert and I'm not socialized to going to networking events. Little thing. Introverts are actually better networkers, because those of us who are extroverts, and you're better at this than I am, but I fail at this, is when you talk to an extrovert, oftentimes they're thinking, what do I get to say next? When you talk to an introvert, introverts are listening and figuring out, how can I help that person? Where does that synthesize? So I remind introverts all the time that you're actually better at networking. Own it. Take advantage. Go to those big events and just listen. And then you'll be able to make the connections later where you can help other people. So if you're introverted and say, those events are just for those extroverts. No, you're better. You're secretly better at it. Own it.
Yeah, and the reality is the majority of the people that are at the events are actually introverts.
That for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So there are more people like the introvert there than there are, percentage wise, than there are people who have no problem jumping on stage and grabbing a microphone and just talking about, talking about whatever.
Yeah, but you and I will do that, so that's okay.
Yeah. The other thing that I would say, and this is also one of the things that I just wanted to mention in terms of the way I'm approaching my consulting practice now, because I started before COVID. COVID happened, went back into corporate for a while. COVID changed everything for everyone. But for the young person, I also think that it's important for them to understand the value of connecting to hubs of expertise. You know what you know about your subject matter expertise, but there's a whole connected part of the ecosystem that your solution is going to hopefully feed into. So you need to understand the other endpoints that are happening. So networking is not just so that you can learn more about what you do. It's also to learn more about what other people do and where those collaborative types of services or solutions or innovations can actually be beneficial to more than just you. So I am doing things now, like I do what I do in my little bubble, but I know companies like the startups, they may need a PR firm or a branding expert. That's not what I do. So I have partnerships with companies like WCP that actually do that type of work. Yep. They may need some, engineering. I partner with Joyce and her Gap team. Need someone to nearshore, offshore development support. I've got partners in my ecosystem that I trust and will call on to help that client have a more holistic, set of services, and not just here's what I do, and once I'm done, I walk away, and and nothing's there. So just a lot of things that I'm thinking about now. No one does anything alone. You need a community of people. Maybe that's the Grambling in me. It's a community, kind of thing. But you need a community of services that are actually going to help your business scale, because you don't scale in just one way. You scale in multiple ways. And so I think that's really important.
And Carlisha, that is such good advice. Be a referrer. You don't have to have a formal network of people that you refer, but when you know someone has an issue, stop and think, who in my network does PR? Who in my network does offshore development? Who in my network, consults with people who have bigger type tech problems? If you think about that, and when you meet people, I always say at a networking event, one of the best questions you can ask, not the first question because it would be weird, but after you've talked for 5 or 10 minutes, best question is, what's your biggest challenge in business this year? And 9 out of 10 times, their challenge, you have no idea how to fix it. 1 in 10 times, you might be the answer. But usually, you're like, wow, that's a big problem. Good luck with that. But if you have a good network, you can say, hey, do you know Carlisha? Do you know Joyce? Do you know Bob? And then you can make those connections. And when you become that person who does that, you'd be surprised how many opportunities flow back to you, because others want to be in the circle of those referrers.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. And I think at the end of the day, we want to help each other.
Yeah.
Let's help each other solve the problems, help our businesses be successful, because that just makes for a better community here in Austin. Right? Especially here in Austin. Yeah.
So that's a great transition to Austin. So like me, you've been here 34 years. You've seen so many changes. And Austin, Austin's a case study for how to build an ecosystem. I mean, we really went from, in the 80s, we were a college town and the seat of government, who had a few big tech companies like IBM and Texas Instruments who had their outposts here, 3M, et cetera. And now, internationally, we are known as one of the biggest tech hubs and innovation centers in the whole world. And, people always ask me, because I go to other cities and I travel and I meet with other tech councils, and they're like, how did Austin do it? And they have like their Stenopad. And, part of it was just this willingness to show up, to be part of that community. And I keep trying to remind people, we have to hang on to that. We have to keep that culture of connection alive, because it's our secret sauce. But what do you think today's Austin, what do you think we're doing well? And what do you think we need to booster up or do differently?
Yeah, I think we are still, Austin strange and weird. It's still college. It's still political. It's now tech. It's music. It's film. I think we still have that eclecticness that makes us unique as a city, right? So that keeps us as a hub of creativity and innovation. And it's not just because of tech. We are creative in a whole lot of other ways. And so I think that makes the city just has a different feel to it. I love the fact that Austin, you can be sitting in a Starbucks right next to, the CEO of $1 billion corporation, and you wouldn't even know it.
Right. And at the next table is an artist who's a sculptor, and you wouldn't know it.
You wouldn't know it, right? So I love that it's not pretentious or even presumptuous at all. It's just a comfortable place to let your creative juices flow. Love that about Austin. I think the future of Austin is what I think we have to do in the future is further recognize that the pace of innovation has changed. So we have to be a city that, what you and I are talking about is it's over 34 years of a boom that's happened, where tech is not evolving, by the decades anymore. It is evolving by the day, right? So the pace at which innovation is happening, we have to be the city that shows other cities how to evolve rapidly. and how to marry these new technologies to the ones that are only 10, 20 years old that are now considered legacy, right? Because they don't go anywhere. I learned that with IBM. Mainframe is still around. It's still sitting in the basement in a very, very cold room, right? It hasn't gone anywhere, but there's important information on it, right? So I think we have to be the city that keeps teaching other cities how to continue to be on the cutting edge.
I love that. And I think what you just said, I wrote down, I think I'm going to add this into my repertoire of things that I remind people is that, that I said the pace of innovation, it's not by the decade anymore. So yeah. I will try to give you credit, but I think I'm going to make that part of my vernacular because that is exactly what we need to be talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah.
Well, Carlisha Robinson, thank you so much for being here on the podcast. If somebody wants to find you, they're like, who is this lady? She's fantastic. How do they find you?
So, of course, you can find me on LinkedIn. Everyone, so Carlisha Robinson on LinkedIn. It's not that many Carlisha Robinsons. There's probably only really one. So you can find me on LinkedIn. You could also go to my website, which is cbrventures.com, and you can see all of my services and read about me and things like that there. And then a lot of people in Austin know me. So you ask somebody and they'll point you to me. And
you can ask me. You can ask me.
Yeah,
I'll tell you how to find her.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. I'm really grateful that IBM gave you 5 cities to choose from, and I'm really good. I'm a big fan of math. I'm really good that the math led you to Austin. So you're a gem to have in our ecosystem. I'm glad you're here, and we look forward to seeing you at many more ATC events in the future.
All right. I'll see you very soon. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody who listened. I say it every show. If it's not for the audience, why would we do this? So do me a favor. This was a great conversation and somebody in your life needs to hear what she said. So share the podcast. Tell somebody about it. That's the way it grows every single week. And then next week, we'll be back with somebody just as interesting as Carlisha. And you're thinking, you'll never find anybody that interesting, but we will. We do it every week right here on Austin Tech Connect.